How's it going, everyone? Back again with another video. In this video, I'm just going to talk to you guys about the 6th generation and why, in my opinion, I think it's the best generation that we've ever had in our lives in terms of video games. So yeah, this video is just going to be a sequel to the previous video that I did. Well, not the previous video, the second video that I did on this channel, talking about the 8th generation and why I thought it was an absolute bust. Well, in this video, it's going to be completely different. It's going to be completely different vibes compared to that video because I absolutely love the 6th generation, guys. Like, I really think that it is one of the best generations we've ever had in our lives in terms of the technical innovations and the video games that we came out, the new franchises that started on it, or the games that took off on the 6th generation, whether they were from previous generations and they just absolutely exploded in the 6th generation. So yeah, I'm just going to talk to you guys about the 6th generation and why I absolutely love it so much. Like, absolutely just was in awe of the 6th generation going back in the early to mid 2000s. We were just in absolute heaven, guys, in terms of that generation. I never in my life did I think that I loved video games so much when I was in my, how old was I? I was very young. I was only between 6 and 10 during that generation. So yeah, just thinking to myself that, hey, this is gaming. This is what we have. What's the word that we were looking forward to? Hey, sign me in, because this shit is absolutely fantastic back then. So yeah, I'm just going to talk to you guys why I love the 6th generation so much and the main reasons I thought that the 6th generation was the best in my opinion. However, if you're someone who thinks that the 5th generation is the best, or the 4th, or the 7th, I will never knock your guys' opinion on that, because those generations were phenomenal as well. Any of those generations could be considered the best, or so. Yeah, don't think that I will knock anyone's opinion thinking that the 6th generation is the best. Just in my opinion, I think it's just the best generation in gaming. However, I'll backtrack that a little bit. Even though the 6th generation is the best, I will happily say that the whole 2000s was the best, with the start of the 7th generation and the multiplayer games that we got then and everything about that. But that's a video for another time. So yeah, let's just get right into why I love the 6th generation so much. So first thing, there's two different aspects of the 6th generation and why I think it's the best. The first thing is the technical innovations that the 6th generation brought compared to the 5th generation, and the video games that we also got during the 6th generation. So let's just talk about the technical innovations. The technical innovations that we got in the 6th generation was some of the best we've ever seen in our fucking lives, in terms of the technical advancements in terms of the gameplay and the graphics, and the fact that we went from, not the fact that we went from 3D, because the 5th generation was the first one that went from 2D to 3D. However, the 6th generation just absolutely perfected 3D gaming, in my opinion, because I will never forget me playing Driver 1 and Driver 2 back on the PlayStation 1, and the fact that this was a 3-dimensional game, and for the time it was absolutely amazing. But comparing Driver 2 that came out in the 2000s to Grand Theft Auto 3 in 2001, I will never forget the time I played GTA 3 for the first time back in 2002 it was. I didn't get it straight away, but back in 2002, and just having a look the difference between Driver 2 that came out a year before Grand Theft Auto 3, and looking at the technical innovations in terms of the 3-dimensional, graphics and just everything like that. I'm not even exaggerating to you guys. When I saw that for the very first time, I was thinking to myself that this is fucking life-changing. This is absolutely unbelievable how great this was. It was fucking astonishing, the technical innovations in terms of the graphics that we saw compared to the 5th generation. Because I'm going to show you some footage of Driver 2 and Grand Theft Auto 3 and just look at the difference. Like, that's how I felt. Like, it was absolutely astonishing. I was absolutely just blown away by how good this game looked compared to Driver 2 and the games on the 5th generation. It has to be one of the biggest leaps that we've ever seen in terms of graphics and stuff like that. It's up for debate. There's always a debate about that, but yeah, it's definitely one of the biggest that we've ever seen. It was the best thing I've ever seen in my life in terms of the technical innovations and just playing these games with just the free, the just the perfection of 3D compared to the 5th generation. It was one of the best we've ever seen. It was awesome, guys. It was absolutely phenomenal, the technical innovations that the PlayStation 2 brought. Not to mention the other stuff that it brought, like the DVD player that it came with, which was a big deal back then, comparing to VCRs and the stuff that we were used to in the 90s, and then having a DVD player in a console, comparing to buying a standalone DVD player. Yeah, it was a huge advantage that we had, and I bet you a lot of people would have been like, hey, why bother getting a DVD player when you can get a PlayStation 2 and you get to play, I get to play the games and you get to watch the movies, mum and dad. So yeah, that would have been a big turning, like a good sales pitch that a lot of people probably use. That fucking car, I am over that fucking car. Every time I do a video, that car always makes that noise, that shit box with a muffler. Every time, it's fucking annoying. Anyway, but nonetheless, so yeah, the 3D graphics were just amazing. The technical innovations were astonishing. So yeah, that's probably the main reason why I love the PlayStation 2. So yeah, let's just get into the other reason why I love the PlayStation 2 and the 6th generation, which is the games. And the games that came out in the 6th generation, either they started on the 6th generation or they just came from the 5th generation and just took off like you wouldn't believe in the 6th generation. So yeah, guys, with the 6th generation, I have never seen so many franchises, games, just absolute classics that came out in the 6th generation. That it was unbelievable, unfucking believable how many great games we got on the 6th generation, and the franchises that we got that I still love to this day. Nearly all of my favorite franchises started on the 6th generation. So yeah, let's just name a few. Let's just name a few franchises that started off in the 6th generation. I mean, let's just start with Halo. Halo started in the 6th generation with Halo 1 and Halo 2. Even though I didn't play it, which was a shame, I heard nothing but good news about those games and the technical innovations Halo 2 brought with the multiplayer. So yeah, Halo 1 and Halo 2 either started with the 6th generation, and some people arguably said exploded in the 6th generation and peaked then, but it's neither here nor there because Halo 3 came out in the 7th generation. So yeah, the Halo took off in the 6th generation. Call of Duty also took off in the 6th generation as well. I mean, not took off, it started in the 6th generation. It didn't take off till the 7th generation. That's undoubtedly, facts there, because they came out with COD 1 and I think did COD 2 came out in the 6th generation, didn't it? It came out in 2006. It's borderline between the 6th and the 7th generation, and that game was great as well. So yeah, COD took off. I mean, COD started, Halo started, Max Payne started. Oh my god, Max Payne. There is no words to describe to you guys how much I absolutely love Max Payne 1 and 2. It was one of the first games I ever played, Max Payne 1, and I could not believe how great this game was back then. The storytelling, the premise, the gameplay, just everything about Max Payne 1 was just some of the best you ever seen. It's one of my favorite franchises of all time, and it started and it peaked in the 6th generation. Then yeah, Max Payne, phenomenal. Hitman took off and started in the 6th generation as well with Hitman Codename 47 and Hitman 2 Contracts and Blood Money. Like, wow, guys, that's my other favorite franchise of all time. That and Max Payne are definitely in my top 5 best franchises of all time. Just absolutely phenomenal. those franchises. Just unbelievable, just incredible. And then what else? Let's just talk about a few games that exploded on the sixth generation. And let's just start with GTA. Let's just start with GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. The big three, the best three, the best games I've ever played in my life, and they all came out in the sixth generation. With Grand Theft Auto 3 and what I just talked about with the technical innovations, then Vice City just came out a year later after that, and it was fucking better than GTA 3. And then, without a doubt, one of my favorite games of all time, easily my favorite game of all time, is San Andreas. And the hype that I had for that game, and the fact that it was heavily anticipated, and eventually when it came out in 2004, it was fucking better than I expected it. It was better than I thought it would be. How many times can you say that about a video game? The fact that a game that was heavily anticipated, that you couldn't wait for it to come out, it comes out and it's fucking better than you think it is. Like, that's how great it was. So yeah, GTA took off. What else? Metal Gear Solid, in my opinion, took off. Say what you want about Metal Gear Solid 2, but Metal Gear Solid 3 is one of the greatest games I've ever played in my life as well. And it came out a month before GTA San Andreas. Just imagine that. That's another reason why the sixth generation was so good, because there were so many games that came out like in such quick span. So you had San Andreas, and then you had Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, which is, I hate to break it to everyone who loves Metal Gear Solid 1, but Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater is the best Metal Gear Solid game ever. Ever. Oh my god, I remember playing this game for the first time. I remember borrowing it from the video games, the video, rental place. What was it? It was Video Easy, like Blockbuster, Video Easy, stuff like that. Yeah, I remember renting it for a week or two, and I was thinking to myself that this is one of the greatest games I've ever played. Fucking 15 minutes in, like, just phenomenal. The games that came out. So Metal Gear Solid, Grand Theft Auto. There's so many other guys. There's so many other games that came out in the sixth generation. You can name them in the comments section. The games that came out, and the fact that we were just absolutely blown away by how many great games that were in the sixth generation. It was unbelievable. It wasn't no fucking having to wait a year or two, a good year for the next big thing to come out. It felt like every other week we had another new, amazing, great game to play, because there were so many studios from the time pumping out so many great games that were easy to make back then. It only cost them, a couple of million to make a AAA game back then, and it took about a year or two max to make a great AAA game back then. And that's the reason why the sixth generation was so great, because there were so many developers pumping out so many great games, and it was overwhelming how great it was back then, and the video games that we got. So yeah, if you guys want to talk, let me know your favorite video games from the sixth generation. Let me know in the comments, because there's so many of them, and there's plenty that I haven't mentioned, like even the underrated games as well. There were so many underrated games that I played that were just unbelievable. So what can I talk about? I might as well talk about The Getaway. Does anybody remember The Getaway and Getaway Black Monday? I might be the only person that thinks this. Surely not. I surely can't think that I loved both Getaway games. I thought they were excellent back then. And what Team Soho, or I think Sony London, who made those two games, they were incredible back then. They were photorealistic for the time in terms of the graphics. They were so good that the city of London that they made, it was so photorealistic that there was people out there that said that they could see their house in the game. That's how great it was. And those two games, and the phenomenal stories that they had with the crime in London and all that, and phenomenal. The Getaway games. Another great game that I played back then was Prisoner of War. I mean, that shit was phenomenal. The fact that you had to try and break out of 3 prisons in World War II, just a great game back then. It was so fun to play, just phenomenal. The game that, yeah, Prisoner of War, underrated as shit. It was awesome, that game. If you got a PC and you can play it, give it a go. It's dated for the time, but it was so fun to play. And then what else? Freedom Fighters was underrated. That shit was awesome as well. So yeah, there was so many great games that we played back then, and the studios that came out that were pumping so many great games, like Rockstar Games back in the 2000s was the peak, in my opinion, of them. Just between 2000 and 2000 and I would say just the whole 2000s of Rockstar Games was their peak. They were pumping out so many great games that it was unbelievable. Like GTA, Max Payne they published. Then you had The Warriors, which was underrated and awesome. Then you had Manhunt, which was awesome, that I heard. I didn't play because it was banned in Australia. That was wonderful. And what else? You had Midnight Club, which was great. So yeah, there was just so many great games that came out. And another thing I'll talk to you guys about is the genres. There was so many great games from so many great genres. It was unbelievable. Like you could if you were a fan of any sort of genre back in the 2000s, you were just in heaven. If you were a fan of action adventure, you had so many great games to play then. If you're a fan of races, you had so many fucking great games in there, like Midnight Club, Need for Speed, which was absolutely phenomenal in the sixth generation with Need for Speed. What were Need for Speed games? There were Need for Speed Underground 1 and 2. Then you had Most Wanted, which was awesome. And then you had my favourite Need for Speed game of all time, which was Hot Pursuit. That shit was phenomenal back then. The PlayStation 2 version, not the Xbox PC, that shit was garbage. But the PlayStation 2 version made by EA Canada, easily the best Need for Speed in my opinion. Then you had Burnout and Burnout 3. Oh my god, Burnout 3 was so good. Unbelievable, that game. And then you had other genres like the sports genre. You know, you had FIFA and Madden, which weren't a garbage piece of shit like they are nowadays. They were actually great back then. And with EA, which was also another company that was actually pretty good back then. I know they suck ass now, but they were actually pretty good in the sixth generation with all the games that they came out. So yeah, so you had the sports games, the racing games, you had the fighting games like Tekken, Mortal Kombat, which were awesome. You had the survival horror, which with like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, even though I think most people will say that Resident Evil 1 and 2 were the best in the Resident Evil franchise in the fifth generation. But the other Resident Evil games that came out, like Resident Evil 4, you can say what you want about that game, but I heard it was okay. I didn't play it, but yeah, I know it wasn't the best. But yeah, so you had that. You had so many great games that came out. Like the first-person shooting, you had Halo, you had Medal of Honor, you had Black. That game was great too. It was so well ahead of its time back then. Yeah, you had Call of Duty as well. Just yeah, unbelievable. The sixth generation and the games that came out. It was unbelievable compared to the fucking eighth generation and what we've got nowadays. Seriously, I'm sitting here bored out of my fucking mind trying to think to myself, when is the next game that I'm gonna play coming out? Well, I didn't have that in the sixth generation. I was overwhelmed. We were overwhelmed with how many great games that came out. It felt like every other week we had another new great game to play. But nowadays we're just sitting here thinking to myself, hey, when's the next Rockstar game coming out? You know, like when's the next game from a studio that we trust that is coming out? The ones that are few and far between, because all the studios that were, well, a lot of the studios in the 6th and 7th generation are practically gone now, so now we're getting less games, and that's why we're sitting here bored out of our fucking mind waiting for any game to come out, because it's so boring nowadays. So yeah, that's the reason why I love the 6th generation, the technical innovations and the games that came out. Just some of the best we've ever seen in our lives in terms of gaming. I loved it so much, and if you were someone who missed the 6th generation, you just jumped on to the video game, bandwagon later on, or you weren't even born then. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you missed out. You missed out on greatness. It was the best I've ever seen in my life, in my opinion. Just phenomenal. Absolutely the best, guys. No if, buts, or maybes. Just absolute. Just absolutely the best we've ever seen. And I love the 6th generation. So yeah, that would just be all for today. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Kind of rambled on and on, but yeah, I just figured I'd talk about the 6th generation and why I loved it so much. So if you guys like this, give it a thumbs up, because what I'll do is, if this video goes okay due to my standards, which are pretty low in terms of videos, I'll talk about the 7th generation as soon as I can, and talk about the multiplayer games that came out in the 7th generation and why they were the best we've ever seen in terms of the 8th generation, and just the 7th generation in general, and why it was just as good as the 6th generation. So yeah, like I said, guys, even though the 6th generation was the best, I will happily say that the whole 2000s was the best, with the start of the 7th generation. And the new games that came out and the multiplayer, just absolutely phenomenal. So if you guys wanted me to talk about that, just give this video a like, or let me know, and I'll do it practically as soon as possible, because yeah, in that video I'm just going to be talking about how good the multiplayer was back in the 7th generation. I'll probably talk about it for about half a fucking hour, but anyway, if you guys want to see that, just let me know, and I'll definitely do that. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you like this. I'll see you later. Alright, bye.